Hi everyone, I'm Mr. Smith, it's Friday, Paraskevia, and today we're looking at our final video on the verb to eat in Georgian, Ჭάμα. This video also concludes our videos on sma and dalewa together. This time we're looking at the third person plural, what they eat, what they ate, which is where the significant changes really take place. So if you're ready, let's go. Let's start today's class with another fantastic painting by Niko Pirosmani. This one is over 100 years old. 6 gentlemen sitting at the table. It's a supra. And they're wearing their chocha, looking very elegant. And they've got really fancy khansi. This one has a very fancy khansi. And they're going to do toasts. Now, toasts in Georgian are sa, dre, grzelo. Dre means day. Grzel means long. Long days. And so toasts are all about celebrating the long life and the longevity of the people there. It is a concept that we just got to get our head around as we consider the English language perspective. On the table, which is the part of today's class, ჭάμεν, svamen. Ჭάμα, sma, eating and drinking. Ისინი, them. Mat, that's them in the past in the ergative tense. And we're going to answer the questions at the bottom. Just to be clear, ღვინო, that's on the table, right? That's what they're drinking. Puri, maybe shoti, bread. That's what they're eating. So let's answer the question. Ras ჭάμεν ისინი? Ისინი ჭάμენ purs. Or ისინი ჭάμენ shots. Or if you want to be ultra specific, ისინი ჭάμენ shotebs. Because for some reason, you want to be specific that they all have bread. Again, it's all about context, isn't it? In English, we wouldn't necessarily say that they are eating breads. That would be an uncountable noun, and that would suggest various different types of bread. Again, vasvamen, rasvamen, isini, isini svamen, ღვინος. They're drinking wine. Again, in the English, if I were to suggest that the isini svamen ღვინოებს, it would kind of ring badly in English too. They're drinking wines. The only way that would work if it were schwa de schwa, ღვინος, and it would be many different wines from many different regions, and perhaps the main objective was to taste various different types of wines, and so on. So just remember that we try to shrink our plurals down in Georgian, but they are a group. And so that's what they're doing. One extra piece of vocabulary I just like to add here. This is a bagpipe. They're not going to eat that. It's an instrument. And it's another indicator of the typical primitive style of Niko Pirosmani to suggest that music will be played and that music is part of the supra. This is quite an interesting word because it's a gudastviri. Gudastviri. Gudastviri comes from guda bag. That's the origin of it. And I know that stviri comes from whistling. But I learned it because viri is donkey. And donkey is like... And to be honest with you, this instrument does not sound like a whistling bag. This sounds like a very, very uncomfortable donkey. Like... And it's not the reason why it's called stviri. But I always think of stviri when I think of that instrument. Because in the United Kingdom, bagpipes are the same. It's not a sound that I particularly enjoy. So maybe this will help you remember that vocabulary too. Slide 2, our verb tables at the top. Eating at the bottom, drinking. And in this case, I'm imagining a situation that I'm observing some people eating and I think, Isini purs ar ჭάμεν. Don't they eat bread? Or perhaps aren't they eating bread in the present tense? Ar ჭάμεν, right? Ჭάμεν is the verb from isini. Isini ჭάμεν. The past, isini ჭამდenen. ჭამდenen. Then we have future, შეჭამენ, შეჭამენ. And then in the past where things start to really change because mat შეჭამეს. Mat შეჭამეს. Now we know that man შეჭამა. Man ჭამა. So the plural form is very different from the singular third person. And so mat, ჭამეს. Here we see the S that we would ordinarily use for is ჭამს. He eats, is ჭამს. And now we get mat, ჭამეს. So moving the S to the plural in the past clearly separates it. And so acoustically, we don't necessarily need mat. We could just say ჭამეს, and we know that they ate. Here at the bottom, dalies, same thing, we know what they drank. Just to go through the list here at the bottom, Ისინი სვამენ, they are drinking. The example I wrote here is Ისინი ლუდს სვამენ. Ისინი ლუდს სვამენ. Are they drinking beer or do they drink beer? As an open question, perhaps I'm hosting them and I want to know they're coming. Ისინი ლუდს სვამენ. Do they drink beer? Present tense. Svamdenen, they used to drink. Perhaps svamdenen luts, magram achla, agar, ar svamen luts. But they no longer do so, or simply any narrative in the past with the D here. Isini daleven, that's when the verb changes daleven into the future. That's a standard verb for Georgian drinking. What I will add here is shesvamen, which is the future form of sma. This highlighted in red is very much bookish in texts, quite formal situations, not necessarily used, I would say very low frequency, extremely low frequency, to the point of saying not necessary. But I do want to add it into our list. Isini she svamen. It follows the same rule as she ჭამენ. But in Georgian, just remember, just so they know the difference between a Georgian speaker and somebody learning, the verb changes entirely. Daleven. Remember this because in the past, mat dalies, they drank. So we have ჭამეს, ate, dalies, drank. And then all of the different mutations in the same way. Quite similar, and that's why I wanted to do them together. Slide 3, let's do some examples, and in the present tense, I've got a comment to make. He doesn't work. He just eats, drinks, and goes to parties. And also, they don't work. They just eat, drink, and go to parties. Is არ მუშაობს, ის მხოლოდ ჭამს, სვამს და K-pops. ისინი არ მუშაობენ, ისინი მხოლოდ ჭამენ, სვამენ და K-popen. Right? Not so good. But of course, we can see that the verb takes the S in the present, is. And here it's en in the present, isini. Okay? Now, in the past, I decided to look at this because, of course, the S appears in the past on the thing that's being drunk. And I want to name that my parents went to Italy and they were there. And while they were there, they were just eating and drinking, eating pizza, eating pasta, drinking Aperol Spritz. Sounds like a fantastic holiday. So, როცა ჩემი უმშობლები იტალიაში იყვნენ. When my parents were in Italy, იყვნენ were მთელი დღე ჭამდნენ და სვამდნენ. They were eating the whole day and drinking the whole day. Sounds fun. But what did they eat? ისინი მხოლოდ პიცას და მაკარონს ჭამდნენ და Aperol Spritz სვამდნენ. The pizzas, macarons, Aperol Spritz takes the S at the end. Here, in the ergative past, no S on what was drunk. What's interesting is that the S and S, let's say, appears on the verb, which, although we would imagine that being in the first person, is now relevant for the plural form. My friends are not hungry because they went to a restaurant, they ate a lot of khinkali, and they drank a lot of wine. End of story. They're not hungry. Arshiat. Okay? Chems megobrebs, achla arshiat. Imitom rom mat restaurantში ძალიან ბევრი ხენკალი შეჭამეს და ძალიან ბევრი ღვინო დაალიეს. They drank a lot of wine, ღვინო here, no S. They ate a lot of ხენკალი, no S. And what's just fascinating and perhaps ultra tricky, შეჭამეს and დაალიეს. The S appears to say ate and drank. the final slide in the future, and we're going to talk about the future coming soon, future tomorrow, and then the future, right? And so my comment is that my friends are going to make a toast in my honor, right? And I'm really excited about it. So, tsota khanchi chemi megobrebi chems sadrgzelos daleven. So wait for it. Now, I could say shesvamen for the same thing, but it would sound a bit convoluted, right? It's almost me saying, in a while, my friends are going to raise a glass in my honor. So brace yourself. It's awkward and not at all fitting with the situation. But I did give a second example because I want to use another example where I'm saying that in a while, the adults, uprosebi, are going to be making toasts. That's part of the tradition. Perhaps in that way, I want to show that elevated verb shesvamen for the adults. This is a tradition. It's your first time. Shh. Like bring the formality up. So, tsotachanchi uprosebi sadregrdzeloeps shesvamen. We can see that the first example is like, wow, woo, I'm looking forward to it. And the second example is like, shh, like something big's going to happen. We don't want to say that something big is always going to happen. And so daleven is the correct choice. Shesvamen can be used in documents, people going to meet the president, what they're going to drink and things like that. There is a case that I doubt we're going to need. But anyway, it's illustrated there in the example. Tomorrow, my friends are going to eat romi for the first time. Chval, mat, or mat, chval, choms, pirvelad, shechamen. Yep, pirvelad, choms, s, shechamen. Mat, chval, choms, pirvelad, shechamen. That's what they're going to do tomorrow for the first time. The final example is a true story that for New Year's Eve, my friends are coming and they are going to eat satsivi because that's traditional in Georgia and my friends are Georgian. So I'm preparing satsivi. Now, satsivi, satsivs, right? Shechamen. So, achalitzlis rames, Chemi megobrebi satsivs shechamen. I've planned that. That's what they're going to eat. That's what they usually eat. So I'm just informing you that achalitris rames chemi megobrebi satsivs shechamen. It's planned. That's what's coming. That's on the menu. It's not going to change. Just, of course, paying attention to these S's where, like I said in the previous slide, that's the reason why this is so frustrating. But hopefully with all of these examples in mind, now you're one step closer to at least understanding where your brain is going and why you keep misfiring, like I did. That's the last slide of today, and wow, what a lot of work. But it is the verbs to eat and drink that really push me out of my comfort zone and into a more fluent understanding of Georgian. So that's the reason why I made so many of them. Next week, we're going to be looking at cases. The 7 cases that are used on nouns decline so that we know their function in a sentence. This doesn't necessarily work in English, so it requires a bit of extra dedication and control, but that'll be next week. Have a nice weekend, and I'll see you then. Bye.